How could a cherished 96-year-old woman fall victim to a brutal crime? What sinister motives lurk behind the facade of friendship and trust? Violet Evelyn Alberts was a vibrant woman beloved by her community. Her tragic demise on May 27, 2022, uncovered a web of deceit and greed. How did her life, filled with warmth and joy, come to such a shocking end? Violet Evelyn Alberts was a 96-year-old widow staying in Montecito, California. She did not have any immediate family nearby. Violet relied on her friendships and connections within the neighborhood to achieve a sense of belonging in the tight-knit community. Her home was a cozy, welcoming space where she often hosted gatherings, sharing stories and laughter with her neighbors. She had a particular fondness for gardening, and her well-tended flowers were a colorful highlight of the neighborhood. However, on May 27, 2022, Violet Evelyn Alberts was found lifeless in her bed by her caretaker. The ingredients to make cookies were found on the kitchen table, which she planned to bake in celebration of her upcoming birthday. The caretaker had arrived that morning as usual to assist Violet with her daily activities, only to be confronted with a scene of horror. One of the windows in Violet's home was shattered, indicating a forced entry. The immediate arrival of local law enforcement set off a thorough investigation. An autopsy later revealed that Violet had lost her life by asphyxiation, and it was determined that her life was taken. This grim discovery shattered the peace of the tight-knit community, plunging them into grief and fear. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they uncovered a tangled, evil web of financial exploitation against Violet. It became evident that her vibrant personality and warm demeanor had unfortunately made her a target for those with malicious intentions. Detectives discovered irregularities in Violet's financial records, suggesting that someone had been systematically draining her accounts over several months. Suspicion quickly fell on individuals who had recently come into her life, posing as friends or helpers, but with ulterior motives. The scheme began when Violet, who was in a financially distressful situation, was approached by Pauline Macareno. Macareno was a 48-year-old woman who offered to sell her a reverse mortgage on her valuable home. Her home was valued between $4 and $11 million at the time of her slaying. Violet, trusting Macareno's seemingly sincere offer, believed this financial arrangement would provide her with the funds she needed while allowing her to stay in her beloved home. However, Macareno had sinister intentions. She executed a series of fraudulent transactions, including forging documents and establishing bogus entities. This was all aimed at illegally gaining control over Violet's property. Investigators soon uncovered that Macareno was the central figure in a manipulating and deceitful scheme targeting Violet. They uncovered forged documents and sham corporations. Pauline Macareno, the mastermind behind the fraud, was then arrested in 2022 and sentenced to 6 years in state prison. But who took the life of Violet? Detectives followed many leads, but it did not look as if it would be an easy case to solve. Detectives meticulously reviewed hours of surveillance footage from cameras located around Violet's neighborhood. In June 2023, the sheriff's office issued several public appeals with information on a suspected vehicle captured by nearby surveillance videos. A $10,000 cash reward was offered to anyone who had information that could lead to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for her slaying. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered even more disturbing evidence. It became clear that Violet had not just been the victim of financial fraud, but was also the target of a slain-for-hire plot. This revelation added a chilling layer to the case, painting a picture of cold, calculated evil. Pauline Macareno had grown impatient, perceiving Violet as an obstacle to her plans. In Macareno's eyes, Violet was living too long, delaying the full realization of her fraudulent schemes. Driven by greed, Macareno decided to expedite her plan by orchestrating Violet's demise. The investigation revealed that Macareno had meticulously planned every detail of her fraudulent plot. She had hired a hitman to eliminate Violet, believing that her demise would allow her to swiftly finalize the transfer of the property into her own name. The depth of her deceit was astonishing, as she had created an intricate web of lies and manipulations to cover her tracks. Law enforcement officials worked tirelessly to unravel the full extent of Macareno's crimes. The case was a stark reminder of the lengths to which some individuals will go in their pursuit of wealth, displaying a shocking disregard for human life. Now the detectives have to find the people hired by Macareno to take the life of Violet. After 10,424 hours of investigating, a breakthrough came in early 2024. The identification of the suspect's vehicle, a review of surveillance camera footage, and forensic analysis of the crime scene were pivotal in leading investigators to the suspects. The investigation led to the arrest of a 58-year-old man, Harry Basmagian, in January 2024. Basmagian, already in federal custody in Los Angeles on an unrelated charge, was implicated for his alleged involvement in the conspiracy to slay Violet. His arrest underscored the complexity and reach of the criminal network orchestrated by Macareno. Basmagian suffered a medical emergency and is on an artificial life support machine as he no longer has any brain function. Henry Rostamayan, 33, was arrested in February 2024. His apprehension provided law enforcement with further insights into the conspiracy and the roles played by each individual involved. Shortly after, on March 5, 2024, 41-year-old Ricardo Martin Del Campo was also arrested. The vehicle belonged to him. When sheriff's deputies attempted to place Martin Del Campo under arrest, he and an associate fled and discarded firearms that were later found by deputies. Martin Del Campo's firearm was later determined to be a Glock semi-automatic pistol that had been illegally modified, essentially turning it into a pistol with a 30-round magazine that functioned like a machine gun. Just 3 days before Violet was found, two of the men, Martin Del Campo and Rostamayan, had gone on a scouting trip to Violet's home. This pivotal discovery shed light on the premeditated nature of the crime, underscoring the perpetrator's calculated efforts to survey Violet's home and plan their vicious and reprehensible actions. Investigators pieced together that the scouting trip was a critical step in the execution of the slain-for-hire plot, orchestrated by Macareno. It revealed the lengths to which Macareno and her accomplices were willing to go to ensure the success of their malevolent scheme. Both Rostamayan and Martin Del Campo are currently being held at the Santa Barbara County Jail without bail on charges of slaying and conspiracy to slay Violet Alberts. Fingerprints and DNA samples collected from the broken window and other areas of Violet's home matched those of Martin Del Campo and Rostamayan. Additionally, digital forensics played a significant role in the investigation. Investigators uncovered incriminating text messages and emails between the suspects and Pauline Macareno, discussing the logistics of the slave-for-hire plot and the financial exploitation scheme. These communications provided a clear motive and detailed the premeditated nature of the crime. Macareno now faces additional pending charges, indicating that her legal troubles are far from over. These new charges are expected to encompass her deeper involvement in the slave-for-hire plot and the extensive financial exploitation of Violet. The arrests of Rostamayan, Martin Del Campo, and Basmajian marked significant progress in bringing all those responsible for Violet's demise to justice. The community, still reeling from the loss of a beloved member, found solace in the relentless pursuit of the perpetrators by law enforcement. What happens when a person disappears without a trace? Should it be presumed that they have lost their life? And how do we find closure for those left behind? On May 12, 1972, the skeletal remains of an unidentified man were discovered on the south side of Winter Haven, Florida, in a remote, marshy area just east of Tampa. The grim find was made by a fisherman, who immediately alerted local authorities. Investigators rushed to the scene and began the arduous task of piecing together the mystery of the man's demise. Upon examination, the investigators determined that the remains belonged to a male between the ages of 40 and 50. The skeletal structure suggested he had been a robust individual, weighing approximately 180 pounds and standing about 6 feet tall. Despite the advanced state of decomposition, which had stripped away much of the evidence that might have provided a clearer identity, the investigators were able to discern crucial details about his final moments. A forensic autopsy revealed that the man had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head, a violent end that left no doubt about the manner of demise. There were no personal belongings or distinguishing features that can immediately lead to his identification, presenting a daunting challenge for the investigators. The case of the unidentified man became a cold case, shrouded in mystery and filled with unanswered questions. Who was he? How did he end up in such a remote area? And most importantly, who was responsible for his brutal slaying? These questions lingered, casting a shadow over the marshlands where his body had been found. Without any leads or witnesses, deputies were unable to identify the victim. Despite their best efforts, the case went cold, and the unidentified man was buried as John Doe. He was buried at Lakeside Memorial Cemetery in Winter Haven. In January 1974, a prisoner named Charles Williams opened a crucial door for detectives working on the case. Williams, seeking perhaps a lighter sentence or simply wanting to clear his conscience, provided investigators with information that could shed light on the mysterious slaying. According to Williams, while he was incarcerated at Rayford Prison, he befriended a fellow inmate named Clarence Ingram. During their conversations, Ingram revealed chilling details about a crime he had committed alongside a man named Edgar Todd. Ingram confided to Williams that they had encountered a man in a bar, and after some drinks and conversation, drove off with him in the victim's white Chevy. As they traveled, an argument erupted between the 2 men and their victim. Ingram told Williams that the argument escalated to violence, and they shot the man twice in the head. They then disposed of the body near a canal in Eloise, so the turtles would eat him. They found tools worth $1,000 to $1,500 in the victim's vehicle and sold them to Ingram's brother, Johnny Ingram. The pair then drove to Keeler, Michigan, where they sold the car for $500. Williams' account included specific details that piqued the interest of detectives, particularly the mention of the vehicle having a Georgia license plate. This information led investigators to cross-reference missing persons reports from Georgia around the time of the incident. Due to a lack of forensic technology at the time, the case went cold. In February 2017, in a renewed effort to solve the decades-old mystery, the victim's body was exhumed to obtain a DNA sample. The exhumation was conducted with the hope that modern forensic techniques could finally provide answers about the identity of the man found in Winter Haven. The DNA extracted from the remains was sent to the University of North Texas, a leading institution in forensic science. Collaborating with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, investigators collected family reference samples from relatives of Lewis House, another missing person from Georgia who matched the physical description of the John Doe. However, the testing revealed that the victim was not Lewis House. This was a significant but disappointing development, as it meant the search for John Doe's true identity had to continue. The victim's DNA was subsequently entered into CODIS. Unfortunately, there were no matching profiles, leaving the victim's identity a mystery once again. In November 2023, investigators decided to leverage the latest advancements in forensic genetic genealogy, a method that had successfully solved numerous cold cases in recent years. A part of the victim's femur bone was sent to Othram. The private lab's analysis began with the meticulous extraction and sequencing of the DNA from the femur bone. Geneticists then compared this DNA to profiles available in public databases, seeking matches that could provide clues about the victim's ancestry and familial connections. In April 2024, Othram provided detectives with a crucial report suggesting that the unidentified victim could be Mack, Lavell, Proctor. This potential breakthrough was based on extensive forensic genetic genealogy analysis, bringing investigators closer to solving the long-standing mystery of the remains found in Winter Haven. Armed with this new information, investigators reached out to Mack's son, Wright Proctor. Wright confirmed that his father had last been seen by family between 1969 and 1972 in Georgia. Wright provided additional context about his father's life, mentioning that Mack was a master mechanic known for his gentle nature and skilled craftsmanship. On May 5, 2024, detectives received a conclusive report from Othram. The report confirmed that Wright Proctor was indeed the biological son of Mack Lavell Proctor, definitively identifying Mack as the victim discovered in Winter Haven back in 1972. This identification was a monumental step forward, bringing long-awaited answers to a case that had perplexed investigators and haunted Mack's family for decades. Mack was born on November 28, 1914. His talent for fixing anything with an engine made him a beloved figure in his community, where he was always ready to lend a helping hand. Despite his quiet and kind nature, his life took a tragic turn when he mysteriously disappeared. The exact date of his disappearance remains unclear, adding to the mystery surrounding his fate. Strangely, Mack was never formally reported as missing to law enforcement, leaving a gaping void in the record and complicating efforts to investigate his case. His family, perhaps due to a combination of fear, confusion, and the social norms of the time, did not reach out to the authorities. Further details from Mack's family revealed that, as a master mechanic, Mack would have likely carried his tools with him in the vehicle. This information correlated with the earlier account provided by Charles Williams, who had relayed that Clarence Ingram and Edgar Todd had sold the victim's tools after the slaying. With Mack's identity confirmed, investigators shifted their focus to building a case against Ingram and Todd. The consistency between Williams' prison confession and the newfound evidence bolstered the detectives' belief that they were on the right track. The connection between the white Chevy with a Georgia license plate and Mack further strengthened the case. As part of the cold case unit's thorough investigation into Mack's demise, detectives delved into the backgrounds of the suspects implicated by Charles Williams. Detectives discovered that Edgar Todd, one of the primary suspects who had allegedly shot Mack and disposed of his body, had passed away in 2015. Clarence Wallace Ingram, Todd's accomplice in the crime, had passed away even earlier, in 1995. This meant that both men directly involved in the slaying were no longer available to face prosecution for their heinous act. Further investigation revealed that Clarence Ingram's brother, Johnny Lee Ingram, who reportedly purchased the stolen tools from Ingram and Todd, had passed away in 2003. This information closed another potential avenue for obtaining first-hand testimony or further evidence that could link the suspects directly to the crime. The inability to bring Clarence Wallace Ingram and Edgar Todd to trial was a significant disappointment, particularly for Mack's family, who had hoped to see justice served. However, the identification of Mack's remains and the uncovering of the circumstances surrounding his demise provided a measure of closure. In the suburbs of Gainesville, Florida, a typical summer evening took a tragic turn in 2010. 16-year-old Sebastian Ochsenius was fatally shot in his own home while innocently playing video games with a friend. For almost 14 years, his family and community grappled with unanswered questions and unresolved grief. Developments in the case offered a renewed sense of hope for closure and justice in this long-standing mystery. Sebastian Ochsenius was a vibrant and promising 16-year-old, deeply cherished by his family and admired by his peers. A dedicated student at Buckholz High School, Sebastian excelled academically, consistently ranking near the top of his class. Beyond the classroom, he found joy in wrestling, where his determination and hard work made him a standout athlete. Described as methodical and hard-working, Sebastian's approach to life reflected his commitment to excellence in all endeavors. But there was more to Sebastian than his academic and athletic achievements. Sebastian was beloved for his kindness, generosity, and unwavering loyalty to his family and friends. The content of his character made his unfortunate fate that much more tragic. On the evening of June 29, 2010, the Ochsenius family home would be shattered by a harrowing act of violence that would forever alter all of their lives. That day, Sebastian, along with his brother Boris Ochsenius Jr., spent several hours helping Boris move into his new home. Later that evening, Sebastian's friend Brian Hull joined him at their home, eager to have a night of casual gaming. As the hours slipped by and day turned into night, Sebastian and Brian found themselves engrossed in a popular video game. Frustrated by the game's challenges, Sebastian stepped away to search for online tips that would help their game progress. Sebastian walked out through the kitchen at 3:40 a.m., going to the computer when an unknown assailant slipped in through an unlocked side door. Without warning or provocation, the deafening sound of gunshots would ring out through the home. Sebastian's friend Brian heard the sound but did not realize it was a gunshot. In the safety of Sebastian's home, the idea that it could have been that kind of violence seemed unfathomable. It was not until he heard the panicked calls to 911 from Sebastian's parents that he realized something was terribly wrong. Sebastian's father, Boris Ochsenius Sr., rushed to the scene upon hearing the gunshots, but by the time he made it to his son, it was too late. Sebastian was found on the kitchen floor, his life slipping away as his father desperately tried to staunch the bleeding. In those agonizing moments, his love was powerless against the senseless violence that had claimed his son's life. Sebastian was gone. In the aftermath of Sebastian Ochsenius' tragic demise, the Alachua County Sheriff's Office launched an intensive investigation. They wanted to unravel the circumstances surrounding the senseless act of violence that had shattered the tranquility of the Gainesville community and upended the lives of the Ochsenius family. With little to go on initially, detectives tirelessly pursued every lead. They meticulously combed through evidence and interviewed witnesses in search of answers. Even with the diligent efforts of law enforcement, the case soon grew cold, leaving Sebastian's family and friends devastated with grief. Then, Alachua County Sheriff's spokesman, Lieutenant Steve Maynard, said the following, a few days after the shooting. "We are very frustrated with this case. We do not have anything to go on. No viable suspect information, no motive, not even any information about how the shooter left the scene. Literally, we have nothing." As with seemingly all unsolved cases, Sebastian's demise soon faded from the public spotlight. A reward eventually grew to as much as $20,000, but tips still began to wane. In 2021, a glimmer of hope emerged as investigators uncovered new evidence that breathed new life into the long-dormant case. The breakthrough, while not disclosed in detail, provided a crucial piece of the puzzle that had eluded authorities for over a decade. With renewed determination, detectives worked tirelessly to follow up on the newfound lead. They were piecing together the intricate details of the crime and inching closer to identifying the perpetrator responsible for Sebastian's untimely demise. Months of meticulous investigation culminated in a significant development: the identification of a suspect with ties to Central Florida. 33-year-old Timothy Thomas, already serving a life sentence for unrelated charges, became the prime suspect. Thomas's criminal history, marked by a string of violent offenses, paints a chilling portrait of a man with a propensity for brutality. He had been arrested in Orlando in 2011 for armed robbery, kidnapping, and illegal substance charges, and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. But court documents show after he was released, he did not make it long before violating parole. A judge issued a warrant for Thomas's arrest, saying he had failed to notify his parole officer that he had moved. Law enforcement officers believe that is why, when a Monroe County deputy tried to stop him in a car with stolen plates in 2015, he opened fire. A deputy shot in the encounter survived, thanks to a ballistics vest. On December 23, 2023, a grand jury indicted Thomas on charges of burglary of a home and fatal slaying, while engaged in trafficking. He is being held at the Alachua County Jail on a $1 million bond. His court-appointed public defender asked to withdraw from the case, citing an unnamed and irreconcilable conflict of interest, according to court documents. Law enforcement is still looking for a woman who loaned Thomas her car in 2010. They believe she was in the vehicle at the time of the slaying. Sheriff Emery Gainey said, "We do not believe at this time that she had any prior knowledge of what Thomas had planned that night in 2010. Gainey asked for the public's help in finding the woman, whom he described as being Hispanic and very short. In 2010, she would have been 19 or 20 years old with a heavy build. The vehicle was a white or cream-colored Kia Sportage or similar style vehicle. Sheriff Gainey wanted to emphasize that the woman they were looking for was not in any trouble. They were just hoping to ask her some questions. In the wake of Sebastian's tragic slaying, his family has endured years of anguish, grappling with the relentless ache of his absence with each passing day. Boris Sr. says he hopes to one day get the opportunity to speak with Thomas and ask him why he did what the sheriff's office says he did. I want him to know how much damage he did. Maybe he does not care, but I want him to know what he did, how much pain he caused my family. While the prospect of Thomas facing consequences for his actions may offer a measure of relief, it pales in comparison to the void left by Sebastian's untimely departure. For Sebastian's parents and their loved ones, the pain of their loss transcends any legal retribution. During the press conference held on February 5, 2024, Boris Jr. said, "This happened in the home where you were supposed to feel safe as a 16-year-old. He was not out partying on a Friday. He was playing video games with his best friend. So it is understandable that this was not a cause of a child that was looking for trouble or something to get into. Simply, he was in the safest place he was supposed to be. We hope as a family that you can help us get to the final chapter of this, which is bringing my brother justice. It has been, as they mentioned, 13.5 years we have been suffering through this. My family, my parents. He was only 16 years of age. His life was stolen. If you could please help us bring this to justice and bring this person forward so the last loose ends can be tied and we can move forward with ending this for my family, I would appreciate it. No courtroom verdict, no matter how just, can take away the pain in their hearts or fill the void left by Sebastian's absence."